You ever notice how quiet your phone is when you're struggling, and how suddenly loud it becomes when you're winning? Yeah, funny, right? It's like the world has a switch, and it only flips when you've already made it. Not when you're breaking, not when you're doubting, not when you're questioning everything at 2 a.m., staring at a ceiling that feels heavier than your own thoughts. No, nobody shows up there. And maybe that's the part nobody warns you about, because growing up, you were fed a different story, weren't you? That if you're passionate enough, people will support you. That if you're struggling, someone will notice. That if you're trying your best, the world will somehow meet you halfway. But reality doesn't negotiate like that. Reality watches, silently, coldly, patiently. It waits to see if you break. There's this strange moment, right before people succeed, where everything feels like it's collapsing. Not dramatically, not in a way that makes for a good story, but slowly, quietly, almost invisibly, like cracks forming under pressure that no one else can hear. You keep showing up, but nothing responds. You keep trying, but nothing moves. And the worst part? Nobody is watching closely enough to even notice your effort. You become invisible. And invisibility, it does something dangerous to the mind. It makes you question your own existence, your worth, your direction. You start wondering, am I even going anywhere? Or am I just stuck? Because when nobody claps, when nobody reassures you, when nobody believes in what you're building, it starts to feel like maybe there's nothing there at all. But here's the truth most people will never say out loud. Nobody cares about potential. They care about proof. Not your dreams, not your plans, not your intentions. Only outcomes. Only visible, undeniable results. And that sounds harsh, almost cruel, but it's real. Think about it. How many people ignored someone until they became successful? How many times has someone suddenly been called inspiring after they've already won, when, just months before, they were seen as delusional? The same people who doubted you will later tell your story like they believed in you all along. But they didn't. And deep down, you know that. There's a moment, somewhere in your journey, where you realize that support is conditional. Respect is conditional. Attention is conditional. And all of it depends on one thing: results. That realization, it stings. It makes you feel alone in a way that's hard to explain. Because you start seeing people differently. You start understanding that most of them are not rooting for you. They're just waiting to see if you're worth rooting for. And that changes everything. Because now, it's not just about chasing a goal anymore. It becomes something deeper, something almost psychological. A quiet battle between who you are and who you're trying to become. Without validation, without applause, without certainty. Imagine walking into a room full of people and nobody even looks up. You speak, but your words fall flat. You leave, and nobody remembers you were there. That's what the beginning feels like. That's what trying feels like before winning. And it's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's just empty. But here's where it gets interesting. Because that emptiness, it's not just a phase. It's a filter. A brutal, unforgiving filter. It separates those who need attention to move forward from those who move forward even when no one's watching. And most people fail here. Not because they're not capable, not because they lack talent, but because the silence gets to them. The lack of recognition slowly eats away at their motivation. They start needing proof from the outside instead of building it within. And once that happens, it's over. Because now, you're no longer chasing your vision, you're chasing approval. And approval is a moving target. Today, it comes from friends. Tomorrow, from strangers. Then from numbers. Then from comparisons. It never settles. It never satisfies. So you keep adjusting yourself. Bending, shrinking, performing, just to feel seen. But being seen is not the same as becoming something real. There's a difference, a big one. One is temporary, the other is built in silence. You see, the people you admire today, the ones everyone suddenly cares about, they went through a phase where nobody cared at all, where their ideas were ignored, their efforts unseen, their failures unnoticed. And in that phase, something happened. They either broke or they transformed. Because when you remove the audience, when you strip away validation, when there's no applause to chase, you're left with only one thing: yourself. And that's where most people get uncomfortable, because now there's nowhere to hide, no one to impress, no one to blame, just you and the raw truth of your discipline, your patience, your resilience. And that truth is not always pretty. There will be days where you don't feel like continuing, where everything inside you says, "This isn't working." Days where you question your direction, your abilities, even your identity. Maybe I'm not meant for this. And no one will be there to correct you. No one will step in and say, "Keep going," because nobody cares. Yet. And that yet, it matters more than you think, because it means something is still unfolding. Something is still being built. Something invisible. Something quiet. Something that doesn't look impressive, but is slowly becoming undeniable. That's the part people don't see. The repetition, the consistency, the small, boring steps taken in complete obscurity. The nights where you choose to continue even when nothing is rewarding you. The mornings where you wake up and push forward without any guarantee that it will lead anywhere. That's where winning actually begins. Not when people notice you, but when you stop needing them to. And that shift, it's subtle, almost unnoticeable at first, but it changes everything. Because now, your actions are no longer tied to external reactions. You're no longer waiting for permission or validation or recognition. You're building something because you've decided it matters, even if nobody else sees it yet. And strangely, that's when things start to change. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, like a slow burn turning into something unstoppable. People begin to notice, small at first, then more. Then, suddenly, it feels like everyone is paying attention. Messages come in, praise starts flowing, opportunities appear, and it almost feels like magic. But it's not magic. It's delayed recognition. It's the world catching up to what you've been doing in silence all along. And here's the twist. When that happens, when people finally start caring, you won't feel the way you thought you would. Because you'll remember. You'll remember the silence, the doubt, the isolation, the nights where nobody believed in you, including yourself. And you'll realize something strange, something almost unsettling. You didn't need them. Not then, not now. Their attention, it feels nice, sure, but it doesn't define you anymore, because you've already proven something far more important. Not to them, but to yourself. You proved that you can move forward, even when nobody cares. And that is power. Not loud, not flashy, but deep, unshakable, real. Because now, you're no longer dependent on external noise. You've built something internal, something steady, something that doesn't collapse the moment validation disappears. And once you have that, you become dangerous in a way most people don't understand. Because you're no longer playing the same game. You're not chasing attention. You're not seeking approval. You're not waiting for recognition. You're just building, relentlessly, quietly, consistently. And the world eventually notices that. Not because it wants to, but because it can't ignore you anymore. That's when the narrative changes. Suddenly, you're talented, inspiring, lucky. They'll say things like, "I always knew you had it in you." And you'll nod, maybe even smile, but deep inside, you'll know the truth. They didn't. They just showed up. after the result. Because nobody cares until you win. And that's not a sad truth, it's a liberating one. Because once you accept it, truly accept it, you stop expecting anything from anyone. You stop waiting, stop hoping, stop relying. And in that absence, something powerful emerges. Focus. Pure, undistracted, self-driven focus. You start doing things because they matter to you, not because they impress others. You start valuing progress over praise, discipline over attention, growth over recognition. And that's where the real transformation happens. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. Not in applause, but in silence. Not in validation, but in solitude. It's not glamorous. It's not easy. It's not something people will understand while you're going through it. But it's real. It's necessary. It's the price of becoming something undeniable. So the next time you feel ignored, overlooked, invisible, don't take it as a sign to stop. Take it as a sign that you're still in the phase where most people quit, the phase where the noise disappears, and only the truth remains. And in that truth, you'll find out who you really are. Not the version shaped by opinions or reactions or expectations, but the raw, unfiltered version that either continues or collapses. And if you choose to continue, if you keep moving forward without needing anyone to care, without needing anyone to believe, without needing anyone to notice, then one day they will. Not because you asked them to, not because you convinced them, but because your existence will become too loud to ignore. And by then, it won't even matter anymore, because the person who needed their attention won't exist. Only the one who built something in silence will remain. And that version of you doesn't wait for the world to care. It makes the world pay attention.